The wealthy, the 1%, sweetheart, they have rules when it comes to how they find love. Rules you know very little about because they never intended for you to hear about them. The world of opulence and quiet luxury has rules for everything. How they dress, how they move, who sits at their table, and for how long. And most people, when they finally get close enough to actually see this in real life, they spend all their time looking at the wardrobe. And pay attention to how it is actually pronounced, won't you? Loro Piana, Brunello Cucinelli, Hermes. And yes, that a logo in sight, and somehow the most expensive thing in every room. But darling, the wardrobe was never the point. You noticed the aesthetic. Of course you did. You couldn't miss it. It's so silly to me how Google searches for quiet luxury jumped 614% in a single year. Stealth wealth, which, by the way, is an expression the truly wealthy and old money never use. It's an expression that will give you away every single time. Well, searches for that faux pas of a phrase spiked 990%, and the completely irrelevant old money aesthetic searches were also up 874%. All of it quite literally exploded and became what the masses were fixated on after the series Succession did what a decade of think pieces could not. It put a billionaire in a baseball cap that cost $800 and asked you to feel the difference between that and a man in a Gucci belt. Sophia Richie's wedding wardrobe or Gwyneth Paltrow's Utah trial looks. They became cultural moments precisely because they understood this language. And you felt it because restraint reads, it always has, to the right people in the right rooms. Restraint is the loudest signal in existence. But you stopped at the clothes. You became obsessed with the aesthetics. Everyone did. The trend pieces covered the interiors, the hotels, the cars, the complete absence of visible branding, and then called it a day, as if the philosophy lived in the closet and had the good manners to stay there. It does not stay there. It governs who they choose, how they choose, what they require before they let anyone within a certain radius of their actual life, and what they remove quietly, without explanation, the moment those requirements go unmet. The same obsession with discretion and substance over flash that built the aesthetic, built the entire romantic architecture of this world. So you have been studying the mannequin in the window of the store, while the 1% of this world, well, they own the land those stores are built on, and they have been running a civilization on it. It is time you zoomed out a little, sweetheart. So instead of money, let us shift the focus to time. Money is just the proof of a decision that was made much earlier. The ultra high net worth individuals, those with 30 million or more in assets, are not precious about money. They are ruthless about hours. And that distinction is the entire difference between how they live and how you live, including who they allow into their lives and for how long. When you can buy anything, the one thing you cannot manufacture is another hour. These are people running companies, managing generational legacies through family offices, the private firms that handle their multi-generational wealth, moving markets before most people have finished their first coffee. Every minute is allocated with the same precision they apply to a board meeting. And that includes, darling, who receives their romantic attention. Sadly, you were taught that love requires availability, that the person who responds fastest cares the most. How erroneous. Because they were taught that time given is the ultimate gesture, that a person who guards their hours and then chooses to spend some of them on you, that tells you something no text message ever could. Scarcity creates meaning. And they have known this since the days they were 4 years old and spent their days in a 5-figure tuition pre-K, when their parents had to fill out an application for, detailing the colleges they went to, listing the charities they are most involved in. So no, they are not on Hinge at 11 p.m. They built an entirely different infrastructure for this, and that infrastructure has a name. Elite matchmaking used to be a luxury, a nice to have. That was then. It is now what insiders call, without a trace of irony, a non-negotiable strategic asset. Kelleher International, Janus Spindle, McLin International, Help Amy Anderson of Links Dating, who did not earn the nickname Cupid of Silicon Valley by accident. Her VIP clients pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for concierge matchmaking that includes psychological profiling and strategic relationship planning. Not because they cannot meet people, because they cannot afford to meet the wrong ones. Private matchmaking for this world ranges from $15,000 to $250,000. Patty Stanger charges between $45,000 and over $150,000 annually. Selective Search has a 4,000 couple track record and an 89% success rate. These people negotiate for months over a corporate acquisition. They spend years building something before they take it to market. They will not leave the most consequential decision of their lives to a Thursday night and an algorithm designed to keep you scrolling. You think that is unromantic. They think leaving a decision of this magnitude to chance is a form of negligence. One of you has the better argument, and it is not the one refreshing their inbox. The entire architecture runs on one thing, not chemistry, not compatibility, not the ineffable magic of two people finding each other across a crowded room. It functions solely on absolute trust. And trust at this level has to be built before you are even in the same room, which is exactly where things get interesting. Extreme wealth builds a wall, not by design, by experience. Every new connection arrives with a question underneath it that never gets asked out loud. Are you here for me or for what surrounds me? And before you decide that is paranoia, understand that these people did not arrive at that question through therapy. They arrived at it through evidence. Through the friend who appeared after the exit, the partner who stayed through the lean years and left 6 months after the liquidity event, the date who asked about the Hamptons house before they asked about anything that actually mattered. The biggest fear for a high net worth individual is not being alone, sweetheart. It is being auditioned for. That slow, corrosive suspicion that the person across the table has already done the math and likes the answer, that you are not being chosen. You are being selected. A 2016 study found that when individuals perceive themselves as wealthier, their satisfaction with a partner's physical attractiveness decreased, and their interest in alternatives increased. The wealth shifts the playing field entirely. The scrutiny becomes a different animal, quieter, more patient, each word dangerous to the person who thinks they are being charming when they are actually being assessed. This is a chew, not cynicism. Cynicism is lazy. This is pattern recognition refined over decades. And the wall it creates is not there to keep people out. It is there to see who is serious enough to find the door anyway. So what do they actually want? Take your best guess. I will wait. Wrong. I just know you are wrong. A trophy is not the goal. What does a trophy mean to someone who already has a shelf full of them? To someone who has sat across from beautiful, accomplished, fascinating people at enough dinners to understand that surface is the least interesting thing about anyone in any room. What they want is emotional intelligence. Someone who can hold their own in a conversation that has nothing to do with status. Someone who can sit in silence without filling it. Someone who already has a life, a real one, built entirely on their own terms, and who therefore has absolutely no interest in being absorbed into yours. And this one may be hard to hear if you do not have a strong sense of self. Independence is wildly attractive at this level. Not the performed kind, not the I have my own career kind that gets mentioned on a first date like a resume line. The real kind. The kind that means when you call, they might not answer. Not because they're playing games, because they are genuinely occupied with something that matters to them. That specific quality is almost impossible to find and completely impossible to manufacture. And they know the difference within the first 20 minutes. They watch how you treat people who cannot do anything for you. The waiter, the assistant, the person at the coat check. I have been watching this for years, and they have never once been wrong about what it reveals. They watch how you handle information, whether you name drop the dinner or whether it simply never comes up, whether you treat a private conversation like a story you are already composing for someone else. Oversharing is not warmth at this level. It is a disqualification. Discretion is the price of admission, and restraint, the kind that does not announce itself, is the most seductive signal available to a person who has spent their entire life in rooms full of people trying entirely too hard. Walk in and try nothing. Watch what happens. Before there are butterflies, there is a document, the NDA. Standard practice now in elite dating circles. High-profile matchmaking clients require all potential matches to sign before they even meet, before dinner, before a phone call. The legal infrastructure arrives first, and the romance, if it arrives at all, arrives after. When your words can become tomorrow's headline, vulnerability requires a contract. It is, if you think about it correctly, one of the more intimate gestures available at this level. It says, I am willing to be known. I am simply not willing to be exposed. Now, I am not going to hand you this without the other side of it. NDAs, they can have a darker side, a history that does not belong in any conversation about intimacy without being named directly. These agreements have been used not as shields, but as weapons, not as protection, but as control. That is not a footnote. That is a feature of the same document being held up as a romantic evolution. Both things are true simultaneously, and anyone telling you otherwise is selling you something. What it comes down to is this: a contract is only as ethical as the person holding the pen. And in a world where power is already distributed unevenly before anyone sits down to sign anything, that is a question worth sitting with before you decide how you feel about it. You have heard of Raya. Everyone has heard of Raya at this point, which should tell you something about how elite it still is. Created by Daniel Gendelman in 2014, the velvet rope of dating apps, profiles linked to Instagram, etc. Even if you even so much screenshot someone, you'll receive a warning. Do it again and you are gone. No appeal, no explanation, just gone. The waitlist hit over 100,000 people in 2018. Channing Tatum, John Mayer, Demi Lovato, Drew Barrymore, who described scrolling through it as looking through an Us Weekly, the most accidentally honest thing anyone has ever said about their own dating app. Then there is Luxy, income verified by tax return, then voted in by existing members. 30% of applicants make the cut, 41% seeking long-term relationships, 46% high-level executives reaching engagement milestones 40% faster than the global average. They are not browsing, they are deciding. There is a difference, and it shows up everywhere. The league operates similarly, positioning itself as LinkedIn meets dating, requiring professional credentials and educational backgrounds that align with their user base of ambitious professionals. All three platforms understand the same thing. Curation creates value, but none of these apps will tell you what actually matters, because none of them have access to it. The real elite dating scene does not happen on a screen. It happens in rooms, private parties with no public address, industry gatherings where the invitation is the vetting process, dinners curated with the same precision as a board of directors, yacht dinners that will never see social media, flights to islands that paparazzi have not yet thought to find, terraces where the only witness is the city below, and the city has the good sense to stay quiet. You cannot download your way into these rooms. You cannot optimize a profile into them. You are either already the kind of person who receives those invitations, or you are standing outside wondering why the door does not have a handle on your side. Most people are standing outside. The rest of the world is only just catching up to. Now let us talk about what happens when it gets serious, because this is where the rest of the world finally caught up to something this one has known for a very long time. Prenups used to be taboo, not anymore. According to the Harris poll in 2010, 3% of married or engaged couples had signed one. By 2022, 15%. Among millennials, 47%. Among Gen Z, 41%. And this is the one I want you to sit with. 52% of women are now the ones initiating the prenup conversation. Over 62% of divorce attorneys have reported an increase in clients requesting them over the past 3 years. The average cost is around $8,000 per couple. For this crowd, that is a rounding error on a rounding error. A prenup is not a lack of faith in the relationship. It is a demonstration of respect for reality. And the ultra-wealthy have always understood that the most romantic thing two people can do is walk into something with their eyes open and their paperwork in order. Even the proposal has evolved. By 2026, the engagement story being written at this level is defined not by spectacle, but by what insiders are calling experiential seclusion, proposals at private heritage sites, multi generational family integration, deeply personal moments that will never carry a hashtag, shared ambitions over shared aesthetics. The ring is almost beside the point, because at this level, the proposal is not a performance for an audience. There is no audience. That is the entire point. Now, some trend watchers will tell you quiet luxury is already fading, that Musk and Bezos and Zuckerberg have shifted from understated to boldly, unapologetically public with their wealth, the pendulum swinging back. And they may not be wrong about the wardrobe, but in relationships, discretion was never a trend. It was always a strategy, built by people who understood that the most valuable things in a life are not the ones you display. They are the ones nobody else knows you have. The 1% figured out something the rest of us are still catching up to. The most powerful thing in a relationship is not what you show the world, it is what you protect it from.